At 5:14 local time, the first contact appears on the screen. Not 1, 5. Inside the carrier's operations center, the radar display lights up with 5 fast-moving surface tracks pushing north through the Strait of Hormuz. Their signatures are small, their speed is not. They ride low on the water, almost impossible to pick out with the naked eye, but the system catches them immediately, bearing steady, range closing, formation loose at first, then beginning to tighten. A watchstander leans closer to the console, eyes fixed on the screen. 5 fast surface contacts closing quickly. Above, on the flight deck, the morning had begun like any other. Crewmen moved through the first routine of the day. The faint smell of jet fuel lingered in the air. The sea looked calm enough to seem harmless. Gray light stretched across the water, flattening the horizon into a hard line of steel. Then the tone sounds. No panic, no confusion. Just a sharp, unmistakable signal that tells every sailor within earshot one thing. Something has changed. On the bridge, heads turn towards starboard. Binoculars rise. The carrier does not change course. Not yet. A ship this massive does nothing quickly and nothing without reason. So the first response is not movement, it is confirmation. In the operations center, the tracks update again. Speed increasing, course holding, closest point of approach getting smaller. A second voice cuts through the room, calm and precise. Recommend classification. No one calls it a direct threat. Not yet. In waters like these, assumptions can create bigger problems than the contacts themselves. Fishing boats drift. Local traffic shifts without warning. Civilian vessels can behave unpredictably in crowded maritime lanes. But civilian boats do not usually arrive at this speed, from this angle, in a 5-boat pattern aimed toward the outer edge of a U.S. carrier formation. And that detail matters. Because this is not just a ship. It is a floating airfield wrapped in steel, surrounded by escorts designed to protect it far beyond visual range. Around the carrier, the outer screen is already responding. One destroyer begins sliding across the water, adjusting its position by a few degrees, then a few more. Nothing dramatic, nothing reckless. Just enough to place itself between the incoming boats and the carrier's exposed flank. Quiet authority, controlled geometry. Below deck, the tactical picture becomes clearer. Optical systems come online. Long-range cameras cut through the early haze. Infrared overlays snap into place. One by one, the contacts begin to take shape. Narrow hulls, high bows, fast boat profiles. Heavy spray breaking off both sides as they drive through the chop. Then comes the confirmation. Iranian-type fast boats. No one needs to hear it twice. The Strait of Hormuz is too narrow to give anyone much time. There is no wide ocean here, no comfortable distance, no room for careless choices. One aggressive move inside a tight waterway can turn a tense intercept into a serious confrontation before half the deck even understands what changed. On the bridge, the captain studies the horizon through magnified glass, then lowers it. Track them. Record everything. No assumptions. That is the order. Not because the situation is minor, because it is real. Out on the water, the 5 boats are now visible without optics. Against the size of the carrier, they look almost insignificant at first. But small craft in confined waters can be misleading. They move fast. They turn even faster. And if they carry mounted systems, they can force a commander into a decision window measured in seconds. The lead boat shifts slightly left. 2 others begin to spread wider, opening the pattern. The final pair hang back just enough to suggest coordination. Inside the operations center, one operator zooms in on the lead craft and freezes the frame. Exposed crew. Forward mount. Possible heavy system. No one overreacts. That is the difference between a trained crew and a frightened one. The carrier holds steady. The escorts continue repositioning. Defensive teams across the formation quietly take their stations. Covers come off, tracking systems align. Somewhere on an escort, a close-in defense mount rotates a few degrees and stops. Just enough to be noticed. Not enough to push the moment further. That is how naval power speaks in a place like this. Not through noise, not through panic, through precision, posture, and control. At 5:16, the range closes again. Fast. The boats are no longer simply approaching the formation, they are testing it. Their wakes stretch long and white behind them, clearly visible in the slanted light of dawn. They ride hard over the water, bows lifting, engines fully committed. No drifting, no wandering, no sign of confusion. Whatever this is, it is intentional. A voice from surface tracking speaks with no emotion. Closest point of approach continues to shrink. Another beat passes. Then comes a second report. Quieter, but far more serious. Lead contact now on direct intercept geometry. On the flight deck, sailors turn and look over the edge. Even from that height, the speed is obvious. The boats are moving so fast against the calm sea that the whole scene feels unnatural, like dark shapes cutting low across glass. The captain says nothing for a moment, then comes the order. Standby warnings. The carrier still does not react visibly. It does not swerve. It does not rush. But all around it, steel is coming fully awake. And ahead of the formation, 5 Iranian fast boats continue racing toward a U.S. aircraft carrier. At 5:17 local time, the first warning is transmitted. The voice is calm, flat, and professional. Unidentified fast craft. This is a United States Navy warship operating in international waters. You are approaching a U.S. naval formation at unsafe speed and bearing. Alter course immediately. The message moves across open maritime frequencies and disappears into the morning air. No reply. Inside the carrier's operations center, no one looks surprised. The 5 boats continue inbound. Their tracks are now firm on the display. No drifting, no hesitation, no random movement. What first appeared as a possible surface contact has now become something much clearer. The formation is too clean, the timing is too deliberate. These are not civilian boats that accidentally wandered into the wrong place. This is a coordinated approach. A second warning is sent. Shorter, sharper, more direct. Still nothing. No broken transmission. No confusion over the radio. No attempt to explain. Just silence. And in the Strait of Hormuz, silence from fast-approaching military craft is not empty. It means something. On the bridge, the captain keeps his eyes forward. He does not raise his voice. He does not turn the moment into drama. He simply watches the geometry unfold the way trained naval officers are taught to read it. Speed. Bearing, intent, distance, time. One escort begins moving farther out from the screen, tightening the angle between itself and the approaching group. Another ship behind it adjusts by only a few degrees, just enough to protect the carrier's outer lane without visibly breaking formation. From above, the movement would almost disappear into the sea. Inside the tactical plot, every degree matters. 5 small boats against a carrier strike group sounds uneven on paper. In open water, it is. But inside a narrow maritime corridor, fast craft create a different kind of problem. Not because they can overpower a carrier, because they can force decisions. Fast decisions, high-stakes decisions. Decisions made inside a shrinking space where every second matters. That is the pressure now. The camera feed sharpens. The lead Iranian boat rides high over its own wake, its hull slamming down between the crests. 2 others widen slightly off its rear quarter, opening their spacing. The final pair remain just far enough back to suggest control, not disorder. This is not a crowd. It is a pattern. A surface warfare officer studies the feed and says what everyone in the room is already thinking. Coordinated swarm profile. Above them, the flight deck begins to change. At first, the shift is subtle. A small group of crew clears a lane. A tow tractor moves away. Deckhands pick up speed, but not volume. Near the edge of the deck, an MH-60 Seahawk is moved toward launch readiness. Rotor blades are unlocked. Ground crews circle the aircraft with the practiced rhythm of people who have done this hundreds of times before. No one needs to explain what it means. The carrier is preparing options. At 5:18, one of the Iranian boats pushes ahead of the others. Only slightly. But it is enough to turn it into the point of the formation. Lead contact increasing speed, the operations center reports. Now separating from the group, the range drops again. A third warning is transmitted, this time in the standard rhythm of maritime command. Then it is repeated for clarity. The message leaves no room for misunderstanding. Alter course, reduce speed, remain clear of the formation. Still no answer. Instead, the boats continue pressing forward. The destroyer screening the carrier's flank increases speed. White water churns harder behind its stern. It is no longer just holding position. It is shaping the space around the carrier, placing its own hull between the incoming craft and the carrier's outer side. Inside the escort stations, crews are now fully set. Safety checks are completed, feed systems are verified, optical trackers remain fixed on the approaching boats. Nothing has happened yet, but the margin is getting smaller. Electronic teams begin picking up low-level signals from the Iranian craft. Not a hard targeting signal, not a final cue, something lighter, surface search behavior. Passive tracking mixed with short active sweeps. They are scanning the formation, someone says, and that changes the feeling in the room. The boats are no longer only closing distance. They are studying the carrier group as they move toward it, measuring it, reading it, testing what the formation will reveal. On the bridge, the captain receives the update and gives a single nod. Record all emissions. Hold formation. That order says everything. Do not flinch. Do not overreact. Do not give them the picture they came to collect. At 5:19, the boats are close enough for sailors on the outer decks to see movement aboard them without magnification. Dark silhouettes, helmets, arms braced against mounted frames. On the lead boat, one crewman is visible near the bow, body kept low, one hand gripping what appears to be a forward-mounted position. The water between the two sides is disappearing fast. What had been distant on radar only minutes earlier now feels close, physical, and deeply wrong. The boats are no longer symbols on a screen. They are real hulls cutting through real water toward one of the most valuable vessels on the planet. Then one of them makes the move. The lead Iranian craft snaps a few degrees inward, tightening its path toward the outer screen of the carrier formation. In the operations center, the watch team catches it instantly. Lead contact has altered course. Half a second later, the next report follows. Direct intercept geometry confirmed. No one raises their voice. No one needs to. The warnings have been sent. The radios worked. The message was clear. And 5 Iranian fast boats are still racing toward a U.S. aircraft carrier. At 5:20 local time, the helicopter lifts. The MH-60 Seahawk rises from the deck in a blast of rotor wash and salt spray. Its nose dips forward almost the moment its wheels leave the non-skid surface. Below, the carrier holds course. No sudden turn, no dramatic burst of speed, just thousands of tons of steel moving exactly where it intended to move before the 5 Iranian boats ever appeared. That steadiness matters. Because now the message is impossible to miss. The U.S. Navy is not moving out of fear. It is moving with control. The Seahawk drops low over the water and pushes toward the outer screen, where the destroyer is already carrying the weight of the encounter. From the cockpit, the picture becomes instantly clear. 5 Iranian fast boats, narrow hulls, high speed, white wakes trailing behind them like blades cut into the surface of the sea. What looked tense from the carrier looks even sharper from above. They are not scattering, they are converging. Visual tally, 5 fast craft, the pilot reports. Got to see a continuing inbound. Formation intact. Inside the carrier's operations center, the tactical display updates in real time with every call from the helicopter. Range, bearing, speed, spacing. A second overlay tracks the movement of the screening destroyer, now positioned directly between the carrier and the lead boat. Its wake spreads wide behind it, a heavy churning line drawn across the water. The Seahawk closes the distance. At this range, the details stop being theoretical. Crewmen are visible aboard the Iranian craft. One boat has at least one crewman forward, positioned near a mounted station. Another carries 2 figures seated low behind the windshield, their dark helmets standing out against the dawn light. The hulls are pounding hard now, slamming through the chop at full speed, but none of them turn away. The helicopter pilot changes frequency and transmits. Iranian fast craft. This is a U.S. Navy helicopter operating in support of a United States naval formation. Alter course immediately. You are approaching an unsafe distance. Alter course now. No reply. The Seahawk moves lower. Not recklessly. Not to provoke. Just low enough to make sure the warning cannot be missed. Rotor wash tears across the water near the lead craft as the helicopter crosses ahead of its angle and slides into a controlling orbit. The crew chief leans into his harness, looking down through the open side, while the sensor operator locks the MX-20 camera onto the boat below. Every frame is clear. Every movement is recorded. Every second is marked. Back on the destroyer, the crews are fully in position. The forward gun is trained, but not raised into an active posture. Heavy deck mounts remain aligned with their assigned sectors. The close-in defensive system sits in tracking standby, its white dome locked in silent readiness. No flashes, no smoke, no sudden move. Only the disciplined stillness of a ship prepared for whatever the next seconds may bring. At 5:21, the lead Iranian boat cuts harder toward the outer screen. The destroyer responds instantly, adding speed into the turn and dragging a heavier wall of wake across the approach lane. From above, the Seahawk crew can see the problem forming for the Iranian boats. Continue straight, and they enter turbulent water, thrown off by a U.S. warship many times their size. Move wider, and they lose the angle they had been building. Slow down, and the momentum of the formation begins to fall apart. That is how professional naval crews stop a rush without escalating the moment. They do not simply block the path, they remove options. Aboard the helicopter, the pilot transmits again, voice unchanged. Iranian fast craft, alter course. You are now entering a restricted safety zone around a United States naval formation. Alter immediately. Again, nothing. But the Iranian boats are no longer simply closing on a carrier. They are now inside a space shaped by angles, speed, optics, and steel. In the operations center, one operator watches the closest point of approach numbers fall again. Lead contact entering critical engagement envelope. The phrase cuts through the compartment harder than any alarm could. Not because anything has happened yet. Because the approach has become precise enough, close enough, and aggressive enough that it must be treated as a real danger if it continues. The captain receives the update on the bridge and keeps his eyes on the horizon. Stand by, he says. Nothing more. Below the Seahawk, the lead boat punches through the destroyer's outer wake. Its bow launches upward, the hull twists, and spray bursts off both sides. For one rough second, it looks almost lifted out of the water. Then it slams back down and keeps coming. Another Iranian craft begins drifting wider to starboard, possibly searching for a cleaner lane around the screen. The Seahawk sees it immediately. The helicopter banks hard, drops lower, and moves into that gap. It does not need to make a dramatic move. Its presence alone changes the picture. Every turn is visible, every adjustment is tracked, every decision is now exposed. The Iranian formation begins to stretch. Not break, not yet, but stretch. The rear pair are no longer perfectly lined up with the lead boat. Their spacing opens, their timing slips. One craft keeps pushing forward while another seems to hesitate over rough water before surging again. The shape of the run is starting to lose its clean edge. And that is exactly the pressure the U.S. Navy is applying. No sudden escalation, no dramatic display, just the full weight of a carrier strike group turning position, wake, observation, and timing into control. At 5:22, the lead Iranian fastboat enters the narrowest part of the approach, the point where one more committed move could force a serious response. Inside the operations center, every tracker is locked. On the destroyer, every station is ready. Above them, the Seahawk circles tight. And out ahead of the carrier, 5 Iranian fastboats have entered the most dangerous part of the encounter. At 5:22 local time, the first crack appears in the Iranian charge. Not in the boats, in the timing. From above, the Seahawk crew sees it before anyone says it out loud. The lead boat is still committed, still hammering forward through the churn, but the 4 behind it are no longer moving like a single blade. Their spacing has opened, their rhythm is no longer clean. One boat is drifting too far left, another has fallen half a beat behind. The rear pair are beginning to fight the water instead of following the formation. That is what pressure does. Not noise, not spectacle, pressure. The U.S. destroyer screening the carrier's flank adds a few more knots and pulls a wider wall of heavy wake across the approach lane. This is not a collision course, not even close. It is something colder and more controlled than that. A calculated shaping maneuver. The goal is simple. Push small, fast boats into rough water at difficult angles, exactly when they need clean control the most. From the carrier's bridge, the effect is immediate. The lead Iranian boat reaches the outer edge of the wake, climbs hard, drops, then climbs again. For a split second, its bow kicks high enough to show more hull than waterline. White spray bursts around it in sheets. Behind it, one of the trailing craft tries to hold formation but gets shoved sideways just enough to lose its clean line. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team tracks the change in real time. Formation integrity degrading. Nobody celebrates. Nobody relaxes. Because a broken approach can still become dangerous in seconds. The Seahawk banks lower, cutting across the open side where one Iranian boat appears to be searching for a path around the destroyer's screen. The helicopter's nose swings through with careful precision, placing itself directly in the visual center of that lane. Rotor wash tears at the surface below. The message is clear even without another radio call. There is no open angle. There is no blind side. There is no space. Still, the U.S. Navy transmits again. Iranian fast craft, you are maneuvering unsafely toward a United States naval formation. Alter course immediately. No response. But something has changed. The silence no longer feels confident. It feels strained. The lead boat tries to hold speed, but the water in front of it is no longer smooth. It is broken. Destroyer wake crosses carrier wash, layering turbulence directly across the path it needs to keep. Small craft depend on speed and agility. Take away clean water, and speed becomes instability. Agility becomes guesswork. That is the trap now. Not built from force, built from control. On the destroyer, crews remain locked on their assigned sectors. The main deck system stays trained. The close-in defense system holds in tracking standby. Higher-level sensors do not push the situation further than necessary. No one wants the next move to be misunderstood as the start of something much larger. The goal has not changed since the first contact appeared. Hold the line. Show the line. Make the other side decide whether to cross it. At 5:23, one Iranian boat on the outer edge tries to do exactly that. It breaks wider to starboard, angling for a cleaner route outside the wake field, possibly hoping to slip around the screen and get closer to the carrier's open quarter. The Seahawk answers instantly. The pilot rolls into a hard, controlled bank and drops into that space, low enough to dominate the lane, steady enough to make the message obvious. That path is closed. From the boat below, the helicopter must have looked enormous. A gray U.S. Navy aircraft holding position over the exact patch of water they had just tried to use. The boat checks itself. Not much. Just enough. A slight reduction in closure rate. But in close maritime encounters, slight changes matter. Inside the Combat Information Center, the update comes fast. starboard flanker slowing. Then another report follows, aft pair separating further. The swarm is no longer moving like a swarm. Not really. It is 5 separate boats now, each dealing with a different piece of the same problem. And that problem is American control of the water around them. The carrier still has not altered course. That may be the most important detail of all. A U.S. aircraft carrier, one of the largest and most valuable military vessels on Earth, continues forward through the Strait of Hormuz while 5 Iranian fast boats attempt to force a reaction. And the carrier does not flinch. It does not turn away. It does not give up sea room. It lets its escorts, helicopters, sensors, and discipline do exactly what they were built to do. Quiet power. Layered power. Power that does not need to shout to be understood. The lead Iranian boat slams through the wake one more time and comes down unevenly. For a split second, its nose yaws offline. The driver corrects, but the correction costs speed. Behind him, another boat falls wide. A third boat begins to angle away. What had looked only minutes earlier like a sharp, coordinated rush toward a U.S. carrier is now coming apart in plain view. Not because it was stopped by force, because it was controlled. On the bridge, the captain watches through the glass as the lead craft loses its clean line and the others begin to drift with it. Then comes the report everyone has been waiting for. Lead contact reducing speed. A beat later, another update follows. Port side element turning away. That is the moment. The first real bend in the approach. The first admission, not spoken over radio, but written across the water, that the pressure has shifted. The Iranian boats had moved in expecting to force a reaction from the carrier group. Instead, the U.S. Navy did something far more decisive. Without a single dramatic move, it took control of the sea around them. At 5:24 local time, the charge breaks. Not all at once. Not in a spectacular way. Just enough for every watchstander in the U.S. formation to understand the same thing at the same time. The Iranian boats are backing off. From the Seahawk overhead, the change is impossible to miss. The lead fast boat, the one that had pushed hardest and longest through the destroyer's wake, is no longer holding a clean intercept line. Its bow still points toward the outer screen, but its speed is dropping, and its track is beginning to slide outward by degrees. Off its port side, another boat turns wider, no longer pressing in, no longer trying to hold the shape of the group. The rear pair begin opening the distance. What had been one coordinated movement has become 5 separate decisions, and none of them are carrying the approach forward anymore. Inside the Combat Information Center, the surface picture updates second by second. Lead contact reducing speed. Then another call. Outer elements opening bearing. Then the report everyone has been waiting to hear. Closest point of approach increasing. That is the shift. That is the line moving away from the carrier instead of toward it. On the bridge, nobody cheers. Nobody lets their guard down. The captain keeps the same posture he has held from the beginning. Upright, still, eyes forward. Because the Strait of Hormuz does not reward early relief. A boat turning away can turn back just as quickly. A tactical pullback can still be part of the test. And in close maritime encounters, carelessness is how small problems become serious ones. So the formation holds. The carrier keeps moving. That detail matters more than anything else. It does not turn out of the lane. It does not give up sea room. It does not slow in confusion or accelerate in panic. It continues forward exactly as planned. A floating airfield moving through one of the most sensitive waterways on Earth, while the small craft that tried to force a reaction begin peeling away from its screen. That is what dominance looks like at sea. Not noise, not spectacle, control. Below the Seahawk, the lead Iranian boat finally commits to the turn. Not a sharp break, not a dramatic retreat, just a gradual, unmistakable bend away from the destroyer's wake and out toward open water near the edge of the transit lane. Another boat follows, then another. Within seconds, the pattern becomes clear. The remaining craft are no longer searching for angles into the carrier group. They are searching for space away from it. The Seahawk stays with them, circling low enough to ensure every movement remains under observation. The sensor turret tracks hull details, crew posture, mounted positions, turn angles, engine wash, everything. Every second is recorded. Every frame is marked. The radio remains open, but now the helicopter barely needs to use it. The water itself is saying what the Iranian boats do not. The run is over. At 5:25, the destroyer screening the carrier begins easing its shaping maneuver, not because the situation is fully over, because the geometry no longer demands the same pressure. The wake field stretches out behind it instead of cutting directly across the boat's path. Defensive teams remain at their stations. The main deck system stays trained. The close-in defense suite remains ready. No one stands down too early. No one pretends the moment was harmless. 5 Iranian fast boats had pushed toward a U.S. aircraft carrier inside a narrow strait and carried the encounter right up to the edge of a serious response. The only reason it did not go further is because the Americans controlled every part of the encounter that mattered. Spacing, speed, observation, posture, patience. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical summary begins forming before the boats are fully clear. All 5 contacts increasing range. No system activation observed, no further intercept geometry. Formation restored. It is the kind of language that sounds cold until you understand what it means. It means the carrier is secure. It means the escorts did their job. It means the helicopter closed the flank. It means no one had to push the moment further. And it means the pressure that began with 5 fast boats charging out of the dawn has ended with those same boats turning away under the weight of a carrier strike group that never blinked. That quiet, disciplined command presence is what gives moments like this their cinematic force. Not chaos, restraint, not panic, authority. By 5:27, the Iranian craft are outside immediate danger distance. Still visible, still tracked, but no longer shaping the encounter. On the flight deck, the rhythm begins to return in careful increments. Not normal, not yet, controlled. Sailors move with the aftershock of tension still in their bodies. Rotor wash settles as the Seahawk turns back toward the carrier. Steel remains ready, eyes remain outward. Nothing about the moment feels loud. That is why it feels final. The Iranian boats had moved toward the carrier expecting to create pressure, to force a visible reaction, to produce a picture of defiance in the tight waters of Hormuz. What they found instead was a U.S. Navy formation that did not panic, did not overreact, and did not give up a single inch more water than it chose to. 5 Iranian fast boats rushed a U.S. aircraft carrier in Hormuz. They thought they were forcing a reaction. What they received was something colder than force, control. And in the Strait of Hormuz, control decides who keeps moving forward and who turns away first.